Welcome to MSP Dispatch here on Friday, April 1st, 2022. Joined as always with my co-host Tony Francisco. This is the MSP Dispatch, your place for news, commentary, and everything going on in the MSP world. How you doing, Tony?
Excellent, Ray. How are you doing?
Another beautiful day. Can't complain, man. So we got lots of news hitting the MSP world. As always, our first story is what's going on with MSPs and exit strategies. What do you got for us, Tony?
As we're finding out from our amazing analyst friends, Jay McBain over at the Forrester Forrester Group, accounting firms are continuing to branch out of the traditional financial services and offering additional technology solutions and consulting offerings. But what's happening is they're finding out that the MSP market themselves are a critical portion of that, and they're starting to acquire these MSPs. So the acquisition of the MSP and the MSSP in our industry, that target has expanded drastically. And I'm staring at a list right now of major firms acquiring per channel E to E. Well, we've got 19 major firms acquiring MSPs. I personally have been contacted no less than 10 times in the last 90 days from investors saying, are you an MSP, or do you know of an MSP that's looking to be acquired right now? So I think that's a huge impact to the MSP community, because it was that constant day-to-day service with a really distant exit strategy or a light at the end of the tunnel. But that light is right here. And what may result from that is understanding the actual value that you have to that last mile, to the end customer. So if you're an MSP or an MSSP, you could be acquired. This may be a time to start looking for that exit strategy, or attaching your cart to a much larger team of horses with more resources that can do a lot more for your initial vision that you had planned for your company.
Well, so many MSPs are, they get into this. We talk all the time. They come into it without a business plan. They come into it without an exit strategy. They come into it because they're pretty good at tech and they have some people that could benefit from their service. And, it's better than working for somebody, right? So they start a business. And all of these mergers and acquisitions, as MSPs become more educated, they're realizing, maybe there is an exit for me that doesn't involve me working until I don't want to work anymore, and leave my customers out. Maybe there's a way to build value and sell off the company. And accounting firms are definitely loving that MRR, as are everybody else. So it makes absolute sense. I love that. Our next story is, it's not Log4j. I want to stop the screaming and yelling and panic right now. But our next story comes to us. If you've been watching this week, there was a new vulnerability in Java yet again. You'll see the name Spring mentioned over and over again, whether it's Spring Core, Spring Shell. There hasn't been an actual name that everybody's settled on yet. But this is a package vulnerability inside Java. And to discuss this more fully, we're going to bring on Jason Slagle of CNWR. Jason, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Good. So can you give us some background on what exactly this vulnerability is?
Yeah, so Spring, as you mentioned, is a really common framework. I would argue is probably the most common framework that people developing like modern Java applications for web are using. It comes in a variety of flavors. The most common that is used right now is probably called Spring Boot. This vulnerability is a vulnerability in a couple of very specific configurations as far as how you would configure a Spring application. So for it to be vulnerable, you have to be running some specific versions of Spring. It's a pretty wide range, so that's a pretty easy gate to pass. Yeah, you have to be running Java version greater than 8, which newer apps probably are. A lot of older apps, Java 8 is an LTS version of Java, so a lot of stuff, including the stuff that I'm running, we're actually just now getting to 11 on some of the apps we've developed, because 8, I think, is finally going end of life. You have to be deploying this as a WAR. There's actually numerous ways that we can deploy Spring apps, and WAR is not the default. And you have to be running a Tomcat. And if all those things are true, then there's some possibility that there's a remote command execution thing there. Unlike Log4j, and this is, I think, less of a big deal. It's a big deal if you are doing that specific order of things, but they're not the things that I would expect most people to be doing, right? So while there is vulnerability there for people and everyone should look at their apps, this isn't the sky is falling like Log4j, or the entire internet's going to melt and be on fire for like years to come. There's Spring has a blog post up now. It went up yesterday, late yesterday. That has some information about it. It's right there. I'll send out the link, Ray, so you can go ahead and include it in the show notes if you send those out.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have Simon include them in the show notes, as well as the Sands link and other resources as well. And you're going to be talking about this soon, right? With Ninja?
Yeah, we've got I'm involved with the Ninjas doing their like security summit thing coming up May 10th, and I'm doing a session on basically this exact topic. Like a 0-day gets dropped and you're running around trying to figure out, one, what's vulnerable, like what I got to do about it, like how do I approach patching, right? Like all of those things, because as a community and as an industry, we constantly get beaten down if every single thing we do turns into a fire drill. Like one of these is coming out every week. So we need to be better as a world of figuring out which one of them actually rise to the level of all hands on deck.
Well, that's good. And there, as far as I understand, I know Caleb and others created tools to evaluate the presence of Log4j previously. There's nothing available for this yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything. This is requires specific configuration to test. I've been following it. Once I validated that nothing I use is vulnerable, I kind of backed off of it a little bit. So I'm not aware of anything that exists like that right now.
I think I want to point out, thank you for clearing the noise, Jason, but I really want to point out that the severity of this is still there. However, it has to be with a specific combination of products. So there's going to be a lot of people, as you mentioned, the sky is falling. Oh no. Let's just figure out if you have the right combination. Otherwise, it's not that big of a deal. And I want to really point that out, because that Log4j, you make that reference and everybody freaks out. It's a Y2K scenario where everything's about to explode. The severity is there. It just really matters on the what really matters is the configuration.
Yeah, and we should be pushing on our vendors to make sure that our vendors in the MSP space aren't using apps that are doing that. I've reached out to several, most of the ones that I deal with, and all of them have come back so far and told me a couple of them are still evaluating because they have wide products portfolios. But I've not had anyone come back and tell me that they were vulnerable to this.
Sounds good. Excellent. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Again, his link to the Ninja Security Summit will be on the show notes. So make sure you catch him and all the other great presenters. Till next time, Jason, appreciate you, man.
See you later.
So jumping into some other interesting news, we have Ubiquiti, a very common security wireless access point gateway tool, switch routers manufacturer, is suing a very renowned individual that has been in the security industry for quite a while. Brian Krebs, is that the right pronunciation?
Krebs, yeah. Brian.
Yeah. So to quickly read the lawsuit, Ubiquiti files its defamation action because blogger Brian Krebs falsely accused the company of covering up a cyber attack by intentionally misleading customers about a so-called data breach and subsequent blackmail attempt in violation of federal law and SEC regulation. The opposite is true. Ubiquiti promptly notified its customers about the attack and instructed them to take additional security precautions to protect their information. Ubiquiti then notified the public in the next filing it made in the SEC, but Krebs intentionally disregarded those facts to target Ubiquiti. The result of this lawsuit could have a dramatic impact throughout the industry. And here's the reason why. If you don't know who Brian Krebs is, again, the pronunciation is not the best from my side. He is an independent investigative journalist. He's been covering cybercrime for quite a while, security, privacy. He's the author of Spam Mitigation, which is one of the New York Times bestsellers. He's been an independent advocate for the security industry for many, many years. By him being sued directly by an extremely large and influential vendor, the question really comes into play of who can question who now, and where does that liability reside. If the liability resides on the investigator side, the likelihood of investigators making a more aggressive attempt to assert their interpretation of a situation or publicize it in any capacity could result in a defamation lawsuit. So I'm really interested about the outcome of this, and I'm not certain that this is going to be can a vendor capture lightning in a bottle and secure themselves from all investigative reporters? Is there a way that after this, if it does go against this independent reporter, that independent investigators can self-actuate in any degree without being liable? I don't know the answer to that, but this is a very, very interesting and influential event that's taking place right now.
The angle that's interesting about this too is this was an insider. This was an inside actor, right? He was a pissed off employee. He was misleading several people. So it wasn't, Brian Krebs is known for, his integrity. He's known for his his factuality. He's not known for making up stuff. He's not known for the sky is falling. He's, one of the more respected security researchers out there. And so, while he does his due diligence to get the information that's happening, this is an unfortunate event where people are, where he was given wrong information despite how valid it looked. And he reacted. In his mind, he reacted responsibly, which I don't think anybody else would have done differently. I don't think there was any way to prevent this. Well, there's always a way to prevent it, right? Hindsight's 2020. But now he's being sued by Ubiquiti for this, which is always that scary thought, right? And that goes back to the VDP programs we've talked about, the bug bounty programs. That goes back to, how is the vendor going to respond to journalists, security researchers, anybody else doing their due diligence and giving out information to protect the general public, which is not exactly this to a T. This is Ubiquiti saying, "Hey, you said something false about us. We're suing you." But there's a lot of what ifs in here. There's a lot of gray area.
How do you handle that quagmire, the conflicting drivers, where you are simultaneously as an independent investigator doing an assessment with communication that is public and promptness, and the two conflict with each other because one requires patience and understanding the cadence and the rhythm of what's happening so something isn't taken out of context. The other, the promptness, completely disregards that. And in security, anything that's 2, 3, 4 weeks later it's expired. It's gone. There's a very,
that's
very
the trouble we were talking about, right?
Security.
Yeah, we're doing this Mondays and Fridays, and we're doing our absolute best to get the information. And one of the things we brought up as we're developing this new news show is we want to make sure we have the accuracy. We're always faulting those other news organizations for missing the mark, but at the same time, I fully appreciate how difficult that's got to be, where you're trying to get all the information up front, especially if you think there's a significant breach and people are being harmed. You want to get the information out. That's a tough judgment call. I'd love to hear from the chat, the family, the OIT family, the MMN family, MSPs out there. Give us your feedback. news@mspmedia.tv. We'll put it in the show notes. But give us your feedback and we'll bring it up on another episode. So our next story is about a well-known telephony program, or I'm not going to call it a UCAS program, a well-known telephony program that's used by many MSPs to offer VoIP. It's 3CX. 3CX was, there was a story recently put out on a Medium blog post, and we'll include the link in the show notes below, of course. But the story is about 3CX having their management backend having a breach. This is a security researcher that was focusing on other items, and then he came across 3CX, used Shodan to find 3CX instances across the internet. He found 204,000 results, which is not surprising. And he started hacking at it. Many of these instances had public-facing management interfaces, which is not a great thing. He did reach out to, and this only affects the Windows version. Those of you running 3CX, you want to make sure you have the management interface blocked off, either by VPN or available internally. He did reach out to an inside source at 3CX. 3CX advised that only 30% of available instances today that are in use are actually running Windows. The other 70% are running the Linux version. 3CX offers both. There was no clarity as to whether it was the hosted version or installable on premises, but either which way, it's still like everything. It's having these open interfaces exposed to the internet will bring you pain, and that's something we just want to tell you over and over again. Those of you that have firewalls, network switches, whatever it happens to be, exposed to the internet, you need to make sure that you have it blocked off. Tony, we see this way too often, right? Like we see, people either they don't update or they put stuff because it's easier to get to their Ubiquiti management interface. It'll be available publicly. When do you think this is going to stop?
Did you just suggest that it's going to stop? I don't know how to react to that. That was probably the most unprofessional reaction, but I believe I'm in line with the family watching us right now. They were all in shock with that implication. I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon because everyone's going to have their own perspective on the advantage of doing something harmful and what may be harmful for one individual or one entity could be beneficial to another. So when people assess the situation and realize, if the capability that they have is there and the benefit is there, they're probably going to make the attempt. And personally, speaking of Ubiquiti from the previous conversation, I literally just used Ubiquiti at a gateway level to block 28 countries 2 nights ago that were attacking a particular location. And the question came in, why are we blocking internet traffic from those countries? And I said, because you have no business, you're not doing business in those countries specifically, but the amount of attack attempts that were coming in, there's an eventuality for them breaching in some degree. So what's going to happen, I believe, is they're going to slowly but surely start to tighten that gateway to what is allowed, who is allowed. And not only is it from a geospecific policy, but there's going to be probably a lot more tightening on the port level, a lot more packet inspection, which is going to require a lot more processing power. And then there's going to be internal policies as well. And that's on top of all the authentication that's going to occur just from those attacks. So I want to say something positive about the industry. However, the very people that are listening to this podcast right now, that's why you're here. You are here because there are other people trying to do bad things, and you're doing your best to protect the audience that is, frankly, entrusting you and your skill sets and the history that you have and understanding these attacks and processes and preventing them as much as possible and creating a good path to resolution to allow your customers to do exactly what they should be doing. So it started off as a joke, but ironically, there's a benefit to that. It keeps every one of the people that's listening to this in business in some capacity.
This is one of my favorite segments. It's the community corner, where we take questions that are brought to us in all sections of the community, and we give commentary ourselves, or we give somebody else to come in and answer the questions. So the question we have this week is, how many tickets can be on your radar before you or a team member are overwhelmed? And to answer that, we asked a good friend, Will Young, over at Barry McKinley, and let's hear what he had to say about it. Here I am joined by Will Young of Barry McKinley. How you doing, Will?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Greg.
Cool, man. So Will, for those that don't know, is a senior application consultant with Barry McKinley. I'm bringing him on for this segment because he has specific subject matter knowledge on consulting with MSPs and doing the work himself on how to handle issues like the one we're presented today, posted by user Qua. The question at hand is, how many tickets on your radar before you or a team member are overwhelmed? We get a lot of questions about this in regards to tickets per tech, tickets per end user, that kind of thing. And I like to see these kind of questions that are coming up that have to do with actually burden on the technician or burden on the engineer from an HR standpoint or from a quality of life standpoint. So, Will, what say you? What's been your experience here?
So this is one of those interesting questions where I don't really feel like there is a golden number that we need to track or golden KPI. To me, when I see a question like this, I go straight back to dispatch. How are you handing out your tickets? Are you scheduling your tickets out? Are you filling people's calendars? Are you budgeting the tickets? And how much time do you think that they're going to take? And at that time, as the tickets come in, you can see how long is it going to take between the ticket coming in to where you can fit it on somebody's calendar. Talking about number of tickets per tech, active tickets per tech opens up way too many variables. I could be working on a server rollout and only have one ticket and be overwhelmed, or a level 1 guy could have 25 password reset tickets and they could have bandwidth to take on more tickets. So to me, I would be looking at what does the user schedule look like and how long after a ticket comes in before we can get it on somebody's calendar to be worked.
And that makes a lot of sense. Just summarizing a little bit, it's not so much the sheer number of tickets, but qualifying it based on how much time per ticket you estimate that to be. That's typically where a project manager or a dispatcher would come into play, determining, expectations on time, or the engineer's assessment of how much time each ticket, so you can plan time accordingly so they don't get overburdened through their day. That makes a lot of sense. Will, thank you so much for your insight here. If you want to reach out to Will, his LinkedIn is below, or if you have any feedback, hit us up, news@mspmedia.tv. We'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Thanks again, Will. We appreciate your commentary and insight. And those who want to reach out to Will, his contact information will be in the show notes below. On our next section, we want to give you something to take away, something value. So every week we're going to try to bring you a resource of the week. And to start us off right, I'm actually going to bring you two this week. The first one, in the same vein of whatchamacallit, of security for MSPs, is the MITRE 11 Strategies for a World-Class Cybersecurity Operations Center. This is a free PDF that you can download. It's an awesome resource. You want to see how the big boys are doing it, the big boys and girls. This tells you exactly how they're doing it. And, hopefully you take some themes away for yourself. And then something else we want to provide to you. CIPP just released another, which is the Cyber Drain Approved Partner Portal. They released last night a new version with which is going to be API version 1.90 and the released portal version of 2.40. If you're a Microsoft partner using Microsoft technologies, 365, Azure, so on and so forth, CIPP is a must. So they've had some awesome features in there. Make sure you go check it out. So I think that takes us out for this Friday episode of MSP Media's MSP Dispatch, your source for community events, news, and commentary in the MSP channel. Tony, you have any final thoughts before we let our MSP family go?
We're here to keep everyone up to date. This is a very small bit of information, a small time that's going to give you a lot of information that's going to affect the MSP market, and you're all family. So we're going to do everything we can. If you hear of something that we have not mentioned, please reach out to us and let us know. We'll cover it to the best of our ability.
Absolutely. This news comes from the community. news@mspmedia.tv. Hit us up on socials, or chase down Simon. He's always available. But we'll be back on Monday. Have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. This has been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.